The forests stretching between Ohio and Michigan have always carried a strange weight, an atmosphere that locals describe as too quiet, too old, too aware. Travelers passing through those areas often feel watched, as if something hidden behind the tree line is following their every move. And for generations, residents of these rural towns have whispered the same warning. If you hear small footsteps behind you, if you see eyes shining low to the ground, do not turn around. Because you might come face to face with the Melon Heads. The Melon Heads are said to be small, pale, humanoid creatures with abnormally large, swollen, heads distorted, almost childlike, but wrong in ways that make the air feel cold around them. Outsiders dismiss the stories as folklore, but the people who live near the borders of Ohio and Michigan know better. Some have seen them, some have heard them, and a few never came back at all. To understand how this legend began, we must go back to the 1950s, when a man named Dr. Crowe ran a remote orphanage deep in the woods of Kirtland, Ohio. Officially, he took in abandoned children with physical deformities that made adoption nearly impossible. But rumors grew quickly that Dr. Crowe was not a benevolent caretaker. Locals claimed he performed secret experiments, trying to fix the children as conditions through procedures that were far beyond anything ethical or humane. People living near the woods at the time reported hearing cries echoing late at night, childlike, frightened, sometimes abruptly silenced. Hunters told stories of seeing small figures watching them from between the trees, their heads too large for their bodies, their silhouettes still as stone. Most brushed it off as imagination fueled by gossip, until the night the orphanage burned down. The fire spread unnaturally fast, engulfing the old building before anyone could intervene. But the strangest part wasn't the flames, it was the aftermath. When the rubble cooled, rescuers found nobody, not a single child. Dr. Crowe himself vanished without a trace, and that's when the sightings began. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this deep dive into chilling real-world legends, make sure to subscribe and leave a like. It helps the channel grow and brings more stories just like this one. Now, let's go deeper into the woods. Just days after the fire, motorists reported seeing strange figures crossing the rural roads on all fours. Couples parking along abandoned lanes saw pale faces pressing against their car windows, eyes sunken and unblinking. A farmer claimed he found small footprints around his barn bear, narrow and deeply indented, as if the creatures had abnormally heavy heads pulling them toward the ground. The reports grew even more disturbing near Feld Mansion in Michigan, where several sightings occurred over decades. The most infamous case happened in 1972, when 3 teenagers entered the dense woods behind the mansion and didn't return home that night. Their car was found abandoned on a dirt path, doors open, radio buzzing with static, headlights still on. Search teams combed the forest for 2 days before finally locating the teens. They were alive but barely responsive, eyes wide, trembling uncontrollably. None of them could describe exactly what they saw. They only repeated the same phrase over and over again in terrified, broken voices, their heads. So big, so big. Over the years, dozens of locals have claimed real encounters with the Melon Heads. A man from DeWitt, Michigan, swore he was followed for nearly a mile during an evening walk. He had small, fast footsteps circling him, weaving between trees, coming closer whenever he turned his head away. When he finally reached a clearing, he looked back and saw several shapes watching him from the shadows, short, thin, with long fingers slipping around tree trunks. Their heads were bulbous, smooth, misshapen like overgrown fruit. He never walked that trail again. Another story describes a couple driving near Hedge Road in Ohio late at night. Their car suddenly jolted, as if something had struck the side. When they stopped to look, they saw long scratch marks across the paint-for parallel lines, too small for a bear, too narrow for a human, and too deep for any animal with soft paws. As they examined the door, they heard rustling in the woods and what sounded like quiet, giggling, childlike, but warped, echoing strangely through the trees. The couple jumped back into the car and sped away. They never discovered what made those marks. Some investigators believe the Melon Heads survived by retreating into old underground tunnel systems, abandoned research facilities, wartime bunkers, or forgotten sewer routes. spreading beneath the forest floor. For decades, hikers have reported hearing tapping beneath the ground, like stones being knocked together in rhythmic patterns. Others claim they heard whispers rising through cracks in the earth, voices that sounded like children speaking a language no one could recognize. While skeptics argue these are just local legends passed down through generations, believers point to the surprising consistency across hundreds of reports. Witnesses describe the creatures the same way: short, fast-moving, high-pitched footsteps, glowing eyes, and heads too large to be natural. Some swear the Melon Heads move in coordinated groups, communicating through clicks or soft chirping noises. Others insist they protect their territory with frightening aggression, especially toward outsiders who venture too deep into their woods. One of the most chilling modern encounters happened in 2016, when a group of teenagers captured footage of a small pale figure darting across Hedge Road. Creature's head appeared swollen and smooth, its movements unnaturally quick. Though skeptics dismissed the video as a hoax, no one has successfully proven it was fake. Experts analyzed the motion and concluded it was inconsistent with human biomechanics, a vague statement that only fueled more speculation. Locals continue to warn travelers about venturing into those forests after dark. They say the Melon Heads aren't mindless monsters, they are survivors. Children who were experimented on, abandoned, hunted, and forced to evolve into something else. Something that remembers what humans did to them. Something that watches from the shadows, protecting the land they claimed after escaping the orphanage fire. And if you ever find yourself driving late at night along a narrow, tree-covered road in Ohio or Michigan, and you feel like something is following you just beyond the reach of your headlights, you might be right. They're said to run low to the ground, silent until they're close enough to touch your car. People report seeing small handprints on windows, or hearing clicking sounds in the dark, like stones tapping together. If that ever happens to you, locals say only one thing: do not stop the car. Do not look back. Do not open the door. Because once the Melon Heads decide you've stepped into their territory, usually you don't get a second chance. Thank you for watching. If this video kept you on edge and you want more deep dives into chillin' real-world encounters and unexplained legends, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and leave a comment telling us which story you want next. Stay safe out there, especially if you're anywhere near the forests of Ohio and Michigan.